And then it was said among the nations, the Lord has done great things for them. The Lord has done great things for us.
We met back in 2011 just through some mutual friends from church. I didn't really know Jonathan very well, but he called me and asked me on a date, and I was like, okay, well, all right, I'll go. Sure.
So she went on a date, and then pretty quickly thereafter called me and said, hey, I'm just not really feeling this.
Yeah, so this started this kind of process over a few years of Jonathan asked me on a date, and I say no, and then he asks me again, and so I say, well, fine, I'll go. And it was a pretty interesting cycle.
So what actually happened would be I would take her out on a date, and then I wouldn't call her for like a month or a month and a half. And then eventually we kind of got to a place after crazy on again, off again, where we just said, hey, we're just going to drop this.
Gosh, years went by, and last December, for some reason, I just felt God saying, like, it's time. I was scared to death, absolutely scared to death, but I reached out to him, kind of cracked the door open a little bit, and I would say you flung it open pretty quickly.
I flung it open,
quickly.
and we went from not talking and not dating at all for a couple years to like 3 dates in the first week.
Yeah.
5 months later, we were engaged.
Yeah, we fell pretty head over heels pretty quick. Things moved fast.
Yeah, we were engaged, and we're about ready to get married, and we're doing our premarital counseling. In that process, everything was going great. Like, I was finally engaged and gonna marry like this girl I had a crush on for 5 years, like secretly. But we were finally engaged, about to get married, going through our counseling, and our counselor just asked us some questions at the end and encouraged us to talk about some things. Throughout that process, I realized that there were large parts of my life that I had never shared with Jen. Things that, honestly, I was scared to share with anyone. And so in talking about that, we just realized, like, hey, if we're going to go into marriage, we want to go into it knowing that we're both fully known and that we both fully trust each other with all of our lives. So after seeking some wise counsel, we decided just to press pause.
God has a wonderful way of taking what the enemy meant for evil and using it for our good. Tonight we celebrate that the goodness of God wins in your lives.
For us, it was this crossroad of, do we care about our marriage or do we care about our wedding? We're about to commit our lives to each other, and do we really understand the depths of the commitment that we're making and really understand what it means to like be fully known and fully loved? I just think that we didn't, and we were so caught up in this idea and this dream that we weren't really taking the time to fully grasp the decision that we were making, and it kind of was, it blew up. Our whole world just crumbled down in front of us, and we thought, like, we've got to do what we believe that God is calling us to do, and that's just to kind of take a step back, say, okay, we need to reevaluate what this is that we're doing and the commitment that we're making to each other.
For us, it was making the hard, but we believe the wise decision to be able to step back. And so we went from 3 weeks away from getting married to not talking or texting each other for like a month. And
hardest month of my life.
In that process, it was really difficult for both of us, and we both just really ended up trying to spend a lot of time with Jesus, and to had an amazing community that surrounded us, amazing church family that surrounded us, and I started a process of going through counseling and really just discovering that I was not a vulnerable person, that I didn't like sharing anything, that I didn't especially like sharing things that I didn't know what the response on the other end was going to be. And so because of that, I had numbed a lot of my entire life. And so even my happiest moments weren't super happy, and my sad moments weren't super sad, because I was going through life just pretty numb. I really had to answer the question that, is Jesus enough for me? And if at the end of the day, all I get is Jesus, then is he enough for me, and is he enough for my life? Whenever I got to the bottom of that and I realized, yes, he's enough, and he's honestly really more than enough. And I remember one day thinking the question, I was with somebody and they were talking about, I wish God would do this in my life, I wish God would do this in my life. And I thought, that's incredible, but hasn't he already done enough? Like, if God didn't do anything else for us, then just giving us Jesus, hasn't he already done enough for us? Someone said to me earlier in the process that, hey, Jen is a grace bonus in this process. She's not a guarantee for you. You don't need to be doing everything you need to do to be healthy just so you'll get her back. You need to do it for you. And you need to do it because it's the right thing to do. And don't expect her to come back, because that's just not a given. So we got to this point where a couple of weeks later, it was actually time for the wedding, and we weren't talking because our counselors had said, hey, you know what, just give each other some space that you can do what you need to do, and God can do what he needs to do in your heart without the pressure of figuring something out.
It was this moment where God said, do you trust me? Like, do you trust that I have your best in mind? Do you trust that, like, at the end of the day, like, I'm going to be able to do something greater than you can ever imagine, but sometimes that means giving up something that you think is really great for something that I believe is the best. Through that month, it really was just getting down to the depths of it for me, and saying, like, God, like, everything I thought I knew about the way this was gonna look, this season was gonna look, is just completely just blown up. But I have to remind myself that you've been faithful over and over and over again in my life. And if I believe that's true, then that's true now. And what you're doing and what I see that you're doing is something in Jonathan, not only in him, but in me. And you're formulating my ideas about your faithfulness and your trustworthiness and your best for my life. And someone in my life that I care a lot about said to me the day that we kind of postponed the wedding, she said, you know, as we sit here, like, this is either going to be the best day of your life or the worst day. And she's like, I believe with everything in me that you're going to look back and say, this is the best day of my life. And I remember thinking, like, you're crazy. There's no way that I believe that is true. I want to believe it's true, but I can't. Like, it's hard for me to imagine that I could consider any of this a good thing, like, right now. It's pretty amazing that, you know, being 5 months out from that day right now, so much of that is true. And I can't fully say, man, that was the best day of my life, but I can sit back and say, God, thank you. Thank you so much for hitting pause for us and allowing us to work through the areas in our life that aren't glorifying to you and aren't whole and aren't true and honest. And for us, there were so many of that for both of us. And God was able to say, you know what? I'm doing you a favor right now. Like, I'm doing you a massive favor and giving you some time to work on you and giving you some time to figure out being fully known and being all things out there, like, giving us the opportunity to say in that, like, we choose each other.
This is a holy moment that God has got a lot invested in. Christ has invested in this night. He's got everything on the line in this moment because he created you in his image for himself. He designed and crafted you. He was the one who knit you together in your mother's womb. It was his idea that you be on planet Earth, and he saw you from afar long before you ever laid eyes on him, and he gave everything he had for you.
So now, looking at going into marriage, our relationship feels totally different. We're both vulnerable. I'm vulnerable, which beforehand, whenever we would talk about vulnerability, I would say, like, oh, I'm just not very good at that. That's totally changed, even just with our transparency, with me being willing to talk to Jen about whatever's going on, even if I don't know how she's going to react, throughout that process of feeling known, feeling loved, feeling cared for, and our relationship and our marriage is going to be so much more whole because of it.
You may have taken the long road to this moment, but I think all of us in this room believe that you took God's road to this moment. A road that was paved with truth, and a road that was paved with light, and a road that was paved with the gold of the grace of God. Though your sins were as scarlet, they will be white as snow.
And it's so cool being on this side of it now and saying, like, so much of what that was is being able to take risks and be vulnerable and be truly known. What God has done is he's just busted through this glass ceiling of, like, potential for our lives and our jobs and our ministry. It's just completely changed out of this one idea of being able to experience that vulnerability and experience the honesty not just with each other, but just with the people we love the most.
So it's interesting that we're sitting right now in this construction site where there's wood and all that stuff around us, because we're actually sitting in the garage of a house that we purchased. Before this house was here, there was a mission, and it was called God's House Holy Mission. And it was a thing that I think it had maybe been abandoned in the past, leveled to the ground, and now there's a house sitting on it. And it's just such a beautiful picture of even our relationship, of that we had something built, but it was totally torn down, and God's been rebuilding something new. And Psalm says that unless the Lord builds the house, the laborers labor in vain. And I think that's what we were doing, because we were laboring in vain because we weren't fully submitting every aspect of every part of our lives and every part of our relationship to Jesus.
What's being built now is on solid ground. It's built out of honesty and trust and transparency and things that are so pivotal for a marriage. And for us, as we move forward in this next season of life, like we both said, hey, we believe and we know that we want our lives to count. And we want our lives to be on mission for Jesus. And it's so funny because we've been saying that since before we got engaged, of like, hey, that's our hope and that's our prayer, is that our lives will be used for something that matters.
Jonathan Lewis Sheehan is a good name. His name means famous warrior. And I want you to know Jonathan has fought for you. We've all seen him fight for a generation. We've seen him fight for a cause. We've seen him fight for the heights, but we've all seen him fight for you, Jen. Jennifer means the spirit of regal brightness and of brilliance and beauty. And you have waited on God and waited on Jonathan, and here your fairy tale comes true.
Everything just kind of shifted and got blown up and changed for us. The beautiful thing is that in the most crazy shifting of our story and blowing up of our expectations, God says, I'm writing a story and I'm building a house that's stronger than anything you've seen. And I'm going to use this. I'm going to use this in your life in a pretty significant way. And for us, we're excited about this house. We're excited to move in, but more than that, we're excited to continue to build our lives on something that's sure. I can't wait. I can't wait till we get to live our lives giving people the hope that we've experienced, and the truth and the reality of that Jesus really can change anything for us. And that's what we hope and pray for our lives.
It's my honor to pronounce you, Jonathan and Jennifer, as husband and wife. Jonathan, if you'd like, you may kiss your bride. We all really get the great honor of presenting for the very first time God's miracle, Jonathan and Jennifer Sheehan.
So we don't view marriage itself as the goal. We know that marriage is a step in the process, but the goal for us is how do we live our lives with every moment leveraged for Jesus. And we are really excited about this. We're excited that this day is here, and so glad to share this with you, and we believe that the best is yet to come.